including cracking down on untraceable ghost guns, pushing for secure storage of weapons, and funding community violence intervention programs. But Igor Volsky of Guns Down America says advocates have provided the Biden administration with a long list of additional actions they could be taking, as recently as after the Buffalo mass shooting.
I frankly think it's embarrassing that after 19 children died, the White House has chosen to underscore all that they have done and to somehow imply that that's enough.
The nation's largest gun safety organization, Everytown, says what the Biden administration has done is making a difference. But Nick Suplina, the group's senior vice president for law and policy, says he'd also like to see Biden issue an executive order defining who is engaged in the business of selling firearms.
This is a vagary in the law that the president can issue an executive order that would cut illegal guns off at the source by clearly defining who needs to be licensed to sell guns, based on how many guns they sell, or whether they're selling on commercial market basis.
The White House's Feldman says the administration is looking at its options.
We are going to build on the actions we've taken in the months ahead and look to find additional actions we can take, but we're not starting from square one here. We are driving forward.
Though she didn't get into the details of what is being considered. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. The renewable energy business is growing quickly in the U.S. With climate change, many of the nation's electric utilities are shifting away from burning fossil fuels towards cleaner forms of energy, such as wind and solar power. But in some places, renewable energy projects face local opposition. Kirsty Moore, Minnesota Public Radio News, reports.
In the central Minnesota town of Becker, longtime resident Randy Seidel made it clear what he thinks about a proposed solar project at a recent public hearing.
So I'm not fond of this solar thing. I don't want affordable, reliable electricity. And I'm not confident in windmills and solar panels.
Seidel spent 37 years working on a massive coal-fired power plant in Becker that provides electricity for much of the upper Midwest. Xcel Energy plans to retire the coal plant over the next 8 years. And Xcel wants to replace some of that electricity with what would be the biggest solar project in Minnesota. Residents here are used to the sight of the coal plant smokestacks rising into the sky. But some, including John Beckford, testified they're unsettled by the image of the potato fields that surround Becker, covered with solar arrays.
How are you going to replace the amount of food that we're using to grow everything with that price of 30 years?
For decades, the Becker coal plant supplied the community with jobs and tax revenue. But growing climate concerns and the falling price of renewable energy like solar and wind are prompting many U.S. utilities to shutter coal plants. Xcel Energy says the solar project would help toward its goal of producing zero-carbon electricity by 2050, which clean energy advocates support.
It's a big step in transitioning our electric supply.
Alan Gleckner is Clean Electricity Director for the nonprofit Fresh Energy.
Adding a big solar project where a coal plant is retiring is indicative of the transition we're seeing brings lots and lots of benefits.
Initially, Becker City officials objected to the solar project's location, worried it would prevent the city from growing. Xcel Energy agreed to remove about 250 acres from the project area, and the city now backs the proposal. If state regulators approve, the Becker solar facility is expected to generate enough electricity to power 100,000 homes every year. At the public hearing, many also spoke in favor of the project, including labor union members, who say it will create hundreds of construction jobs. Nathan Munfee spoke on behalf of the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 49.
We feel like it is a way for the men and women who've worked in the trades, providing energy for the state for so many years, to continue to build projects that would provide energy for the state going into the future.
But some Becker residents complained that the utility-scale solar farm will take up more land from the coal plant and provide a fraction of the jobs. Once the solar project is built, Xcel estimates just 4 to 6 permanent employees will be needed. That's far fewer than the 200 plus who work at the coal plant. Gabe Chan is an associate professor at the University of Minnesota who studies energy policy.
These plants are closing anyway, and so the kind of comparison between the
coal jobs don't grow the renewable jobs that will be there is a bit of an unfair comparison.
State regulators are expected to decide this summer whether to approve the permits Excel needs to build the solar project. For NPR News, I'm Kirsten Moran in Buffalo, Minnesota.
Support for All Tech Considered comes from C3AI. C3AI software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable problems. C3AI with more than 445 million users, the fastest dedicated to helping people take control of safety, privacy, and more. Learn more at fast.com. You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
And it's on 89.3 KPCC. I'm Julie Pascal. We're getting more details about what happened during this week's massacre at an elementary school in Texas. Authorities now say students trapped inside a classroom with the gunman repeatedly called 911 as officers waited in the hallway for more than 45 minutes. The head of the Texas Department of Public Safety says the commander at the scene thought the gunman was barricaded and that the kids were no longer at risk, but it was a wrong decision not to go in sooner. Former LAPD Deputy Chief Mike Downing says the incident commander likely had enough information to treat the threat as an active shooter situation.
You have victims still at risk, needing medical attention, victims still at risk in the midst of an active shooter, and you cannot consider that individual to be a barricaded suspect, which is a whole other tactical approach.
Downing says had police treated this as an active shooter situation, officers would have rushed into the classroom to stop the gunman. Looking at freeways in Torrance on the 405 North near Normandy Avenue, we have a stalled car blocking lanes. Backup starts at Delano. You're listening to 89.3 KPCC. All Things Considered continues. It's 4:49.
KPCC supporters include UCI Health. With specialists in prostate cancer surgery, UCI Health performs minimally invasive outpatient prostate cancer surgery, which can result in faster recovery. To learn more, visit ucihealth.org/prostate.
Pasadena Water and Power. PWP is helping customers make the switch to electric vehicles. They can help reduce their carbon footprint and improve air quality by trading in a gas-powered car for an EV. If you already drive electric, you can check out the Arroyo Charging Depot or Marengo Charging Plaza in Pasadena for public charging. Learn more about PWP's transportation electrification program at pwpweb.com/EV. PWP, let's power up Pasadena together.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Sasha Pfeiffer. A new show on Netflix chronicles the challenges of dating for people on the autism spectrum.
Everyone is different, whether you're on a spectrum or not.
We are, however, all looking for the same thing: respect, understanding, and a whole lot of love.
Love on the Spectrum US is the American version of a documentary series first launched in Australia.
What age were you diagnosed with autism?
I was 10.
And what does it mean for you?
It definitely affects my social interactions, and that's kind of, I think, contributed to my dating life and how it's so difficult.
That's Kaylin Partlow of Greenville, South Carolina. She's one of the participants on the show. You heard her talking with Love on the Spectrum creator Cian O'Cleary. I spoke with both of them, and one of the things I asked Cian O'Cleary is why it was important for him to make this show.
When we were pitching the series, Love on the Spectrum, to the public broadcasting here in Australia, some of the initial reactions were, well, you want to make a whole series just with people on the spectrum? Isn't it going to feel same? Isn't it going to feel, so, and that was the kind of the point of making the series, was what people's hesitations were, was that, no, it's not going to feel the same because there's a huge diversity within the autism community. And that's the most important thing, for me. That's the most important thing we can do is help audiences understand the diversity of autism, and that you can't make assumptions about somebody because of a label. Everybody's so very different.
Kaylin, you're featured in this series, so the public is following along on your dating adventures. And that meant sharing a lot about your dating life and what you would like in a romantic relationship. Why did you want to be part of the show?
I think for me, part of the reason I wanted to participate was to be able to show everybody part of the, diversity of the autism spectrum. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what autism looks like, especially in the media. And I think Love on the Spectrum does a phenomenal job at highlighting the differences just between individuals who maybe share the same diagnosis, but it presents in different ways.
How do you think the media portrays it? It sounds like you don't think the media does that.
Generally not. I think they often use white males, and kind of the stereotype is that they have advanced IQs and have advanced abilities in different skill areas. Most people on the spectrum have average intelligence. Most people on the spectrum are not savants and do not have some, gifted abilities in a certain skill area. But the media, think Big Bang Theory or The Good Doctor or The Accountant are some that come to mind, where people are extraordinarily gifted, and that does happen, but kind of the narrative is the same. And I think Love on the Spectrum does a great job at highlighting that, I think maybe what it really is rather than what we might wish it to be.
Kian, as I watched your show, I often wondered how much editing was involved, and whether you edited the film in a way that emphasized people's differences because they're autistic. What's your filmmaking approach there?
No. I mean, it's sure you can, I guess, emphasize certain things in an edit or take certain things away. But for us, the most important thing is that it feels like a truthful representation of the person who we've been filming. And, we get to know people well, and to me, they're the most important critics of the show. And hopefully everybody's happy with how the edit has been. But, we're not sitting in edit suites trying to kind of make people look a certain way. We're just trying to portray them as truthfully as possible.
Kaylin, I think you've pointed out in the past that many people have described you as high-functioning autistic, not what they think the stereotype of someone with autism would be. What do you think when you hear people describe you that way?
Generally, I think when people say high-functioning, what they really mean is that somebody has strong abilities in their language, so they understand a lot of language and they're able to express a lot of language. But that doesn't necessarily account for a lot of other skill areas, so social skills, maintaining relationships, knowing what to say and when to say it, or how to say it even, executive functioning, so time management, self-management. That's always been a struggle for me.
Kaylin, in one episode, your roommate says it can be challenging for you to find someone who doesn't write you off based on your diagnosis. That's how she put it. How do you think your autism affects your dating life?
I think we talked about it briefly in the series, where I had kind of encountered some negative responses when disclosing my diagnosis to the people early on as it relates to dating.
Meaning the relationship ended as soon as you mentioned it?
It did, yeah. When I went on that date with the firefighter, I had disclosed my diagnosis, and he basically stood up and walked away.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you decide, by the way, when to try to introduce that to a relationship?
What I think I would like to do in an ideal world is get to know the person and give them an opportunity to get to know me. By the time I would be able to disclose, they would already be comfortable with me and have enough information and be comfortable, I guess, enough to ask clarifying questions.
And do you feel like that's working?
Theoretically.
Can I actually just jump back and say something about Kaylin? What she's talking about just now. Kaylin being a part of a series like this is going to change that. Only maybe a little bit from now, but it's incremental changes, and that's why we, for me, as somebody who's kind of putting this out there and hoping that people respond to it and understand it, what I really hope is that those misconceptions do get slowly broken down and taken away, because it shouldn't be the case that if Kaylin tells somebody straight away that she's on the spectrum, that there's a judgment there and that they get up and walk away, So hopefully the more people understand about the diversity of the spectrum, that those misconceptions can be kind of torn down. That's the hope,
Kaylin, without giving too much away about how your dating experience went on the show, what have you heard from audiences about your participation in the series?
I have heard a lot, actually. I've been gaining about 1,000 followers on Instagram every day, and they have been messaging me quite frequently, and a lot of the messages I'm getting are from other autistic women saying that they see a lot of themselves in me, and I've gotten a couple messages from people saying that watching the show had made them cry because they had never seen somebody who was so relatable to them. And I thought that was really important, and I didn't anticipate getting messages like that. I mean, I thought, people would like it, but I didn't anticipate so many people having such a strong reaction to it. Mothers of autistic children, specifically autistic daughters, saying that their daughter really looked up to to me and really admired my participation in the show.
That's so great, Kaylee. That's great. You've probably had a few proposals for dates online as well.
Quite a few, yeah. None of them very intriguing, and a couple of them led themselves to being blocked online just because the just excessiveness of it. But yes.
Kaylin Partlow is featured on the Netflix show Love on the Spectrum, and Kian O'Cleary is its creator and director. Thank you to both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News.
89.3 KPCC, LA's #1 NPR station.
It's All Things Considered on KPCC. I'm Julia Paskin. Nice and cool tonight with temperatures ranging from the low to high 50s. Patchy drizzle is expected to come through Orange County between 11 tonight and 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. That should all clear in time for your weekend plans, but you might want to bring any tables and chairs inside for the night. Not bad weather for barbecuing this Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow temperatures topping out in the mid-60s on the coast. That's the low 70s inland and mid-70s in the valleys. Sunday and Monday, high 60s on the coast, hitting mid-70s inland. And then we're looking at Sunday in the valleys, also high 70s, but we might top 80 degrees in the valleys on Monday. So all in all, not a bad holiday week.